Hi guys, it's Sunday, September the 1st, 2013. We're going to go through Grandma Sobolewski's recipe for beef tomato soup. Charles J.
Good day. This soup goes back many years, and we've had a lot of requests from friends, relatives, and our children's children, and my brother's, who's my favorite brother, by the way, and his children and their children, to make this soup. The soup goes back, my first memories of it are 1944, 43. It was called, at least we called it, a harvest soup because it was made in the end of August, early September, when the workers would go out in the fields and harvest the hay and other items that are grown, the corn and what have you. And the workers needed to be fed. So my grandmother on my mother's side, we called her Bubba, made this soup. They would slaughter a cow and take big chunks of chuck roast and make a soup with heavily concentrated tomatoes from the garden. At that time of year, the tomatoes are all very ripe, and unless you do something with them quickly, you'll lose them. So they used the tomatoes and the onions and the carrots, all from the field that they grew, to make this soup in big pots to feed the workers. Now Karen's going to walk you through how to make this soup and also how to take the results of this soup and convert it into other dishes. Homemade noodles, dumplings, and the highlight of the entire program is the making of pierogies.
Pierogies.
And these pierogies can be done in many different ways, and Karen will go through and give you the great details of how that's to be done. Hold your questions till the end of the show, and we'll try our best to answer them. I'll turn the show over now to Karen Meemaw to handle the presentation and the cooking of the foods. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to give you some pointers. You need a big kettle like this, a big soup pot. You're not going to be filling it up, but it's a good one so it keeps from boiling over. Okay, take two. This is about 8 pounds of chuck roast. If you can find it with the bone in, which I usually love to use, it's very difficult down here to find it, but if you can find bone, it's even better. You can probably find it up north more easily. Okay, so we're going to put it in the pot. And we're going to, I try to slice it into maybe 3 so that it'll cook faster. And after you put the meat in, you're going to cover it with water. And the celery here, I like to use about down this far, so you're going to cut off about better than halfway down. Wash it and put it in whole like this, right into the pot. You're going to put 2 whole onions into the pot, salt and pepper, and put it on to boil. You can put a lid on it so it will come to boil quicker, and it's going to take a few hours. And the next part, I'll let you know how long. I'll time it when you want the meat to be falling apart. So that this is what we're going to use tomorrow to make the pierogies. So that's going to sit overnight. But we're going to have the soup tonight. And the carrots, I like to wait till toward the end, till the meat's almost done. Otherwise, they'll get too mushy. So you want to put the carrots in probably the last half hour or so. And again, I'll just let you know what time tomorrow. And you're going to use the salt and pepper. It's very easy. And I like to let it boil a little. And sometimes the meat, you want to skim off some of the stuff that boils out of the meat from the top. And as soon as you've got that skimmed off, you're going to put 2 whole cans of tomatoes. You can just sort of slice them in half, but they're going to cook up. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And then while the soup is cooking, you can make dumplings and homemade noodles, or we can make homemade noodles with the pierogies tomorrow. And the kids all like the little skinny, fine noodles, which we'll use the night of the soup. Noodles and dumplings.
Okay, now we're cutting up the meat. You can cut all the way through, but depending on the thickness of the meat, it will cook quicker if you can cut into smaller pieces and put it in, because it's awfully thick, and it's going to take a few hours to be doing this, to be cooking the meat. Now we're going to cover over the meat, probably in a soup pot like this, You're going to want to fill it up, probably not quite 3/4 because we're going to be adding the vegetables and all. So a little over a half. You want to fill up the pot. Then you could put the 2 onions in either whole. I like to do that because I don't like to have to like scoop out a bunch of onions later. You could cut them in half. Either way, it's going to be cooking through. And then when you cut into that celery stalk, about 3/4 of it, just wash it, and the more leaves the better because they're very flavorful. So we're gonna fill it up. Then I like to put it on high heat immediately so that it can really start to boil. You can add your seasonings, and you're going to have to add that a lot later too. Some salt and pepper. We're going to be waiting to, as it's boiling, I like to add the carrots later on. Put it on the high heat. A lot of times I'll just put a lid on. Now it's been cooking a while, and this is where we want to skim off what has been cooking out of the meat. That's usually about an hour after good boiling. You're going to skim this off. It just cooks out of the meat. Just want to get rid of that. Then it's going to be time to add the canned tomatoes. You can use some of your own canned tomatoes, or my favorite cans are the Hunts. You can tell now how the meat's starting to cook apart. Just put the whole can in, and while it's boiling, I try to cut them up in half a little, but they'll start to cook apart. And again, growing up, you always had to rinse the can out a little bit, get every last drop of the tomatoes juice out. So here's 2 cans in there. Now it's become the tomato soup. And the meat's starting to break up. And the tomatoes, I always go over, cut them up a little more. And the meat's just about done, so this is when I like to add the carrots. And now that's 5 pounds in the colander. I'm going to put like about 3/4, and I cook the rest of the carrots in a pan by themselves. As the carrots are sweet, and if you add too much, it changes the flavor of the soup. There's always, some of the kids don't like any carrots, and some like extra. So if you've got any little kids you want to strain out vegetables for, there's a lot of vegetables in here to do some straining. Now while the soup has been cooking, I've made the dumplings, so we're going to get to that soon. You need to fill another large soup pot to make the dumplings because they cook up you need a nice sizable pan to cook them in. Dumplings recipe from my mom on the German side. While the water's boiling, you're going to make up the dough for the dumplings. They're a drop dumpling. You want to fill it a little better, maybe about 3/4, but you need to leave enough room. You're going to break about 10 eggs. I like to use a metal bowl because one of the ways of telling when the dough is ready, it pulls away from the sides. You stop short of having a noodle dough because we're not going to be rolling these, so it's going to be a little sticky. Just beat up the eggs. And I always use a little squirt of water, just like that. These will make them a little fluffier. Dumpling dough is very easy. Eggs, touch of water, and then you're going to add flour, and that's going to be it. Dumplings are great for the beef soup, or all of the kids like them in homemade chicken noodle soup too. So this is a regular part of making soup are the dumplings. They're just starting now. You can see how the dough is coming away from the sides of the bowl. That's when you stop so it doesn't get to be too thick a dough. And it's just something that you're going to have to work. It's hard to tell how much because some of the eggs are smaller than others, and you just have to get the feel of it. Now we're using a teaspoon to, I'd just say the tip, depending on what size dumpling you like. I like little smaller, kind of bite size, because these are really going to like puff up. So the edge of a teaspoon. It takes some time and patience, but you'll get it done. This is just all-purpose flour. One time I accidentally used self-rising, and they just sort of broke apart in the water. Here they are. They're nearing completion. I would say, and once they're all in there, about, you can't overcook them basically. Test them, but maybe up to a half an hour max. And we're going to start the pierogies. And in order to prepare the filling, you're going to clean and chop in large pieces about 3 large onions. These are going to be ground in with the meat to flavor the filling. Here's the meat that we had taken out the night before. When you make the soup, before you put it away, you take out all of the meat, drain it, and now it's firmer. You want to trim off the fat and cut it in pieces that are going to be ground. I finally got an electric grinder. I used to use the old attached to the table, and then they get old and rusty. I think they still make them so that you can buy a new one like that. But this is very easy. You can even make sausage with this. It's a wearing, so it's wonderful to use to grind. Chopped nuts for the nut rolls at Christmas. And as you add the meat and you alternate it with the onions so you get the flavor throughout. Here we have a family affair, and the next generations of Sobolewskis are learning. Depending on the amount of meat, I would say I did end up adding another egg to this batch because there was more meat. It will already be moist because it had from the soup. And it doesn't need to stick together, but you need just, I think, 2 eggs. Everyone loves to get their hands into the food. And you just want it to, you're going to be feeling it and see if it stays together when you squeeze it, and that's perfect. Now we're going to make the dough for the pierogies. And you all have a favorite baking bowl. I like this one. It's a nice plastic large bowl. You're going to break 10 eggs into it. We're going to go back to beating again. We're going to do our quick squirt of water again. But for this dough, Chuck and Jean's mom, Pauline, our grandma, the kids' grandma, she has a secret ingredient that's a teaspoon of cider vinegar. We also use it for noodle dough. Again, this is all there is to the dough. You're just going to add flour. This is good to work with dough in the sink, as I'm sure you all do. It's getting done. As soon as you can mix it and it's not sticky, you're good to go. So this dough is also can be used to make your homemade noodles. This amount of dough should make about 6 dozen of pierogies. You just need to take a little and roll it into the size of a walnut. The older generation always rolled out large circles and then used like a glass to cut. I wasn't good at that, so I've devised my own way of rolling each one. So when they say hand roll, this is exactly what it is. You roll each ball out and you'll feel it. That's about the size of the dough that you want to make it at least 3-inch diameter. And the thickness has to be just right, otherwise the meat will cook through. You don't want the dough to be thin. So you roll a ball, you press it out, and you press it on some more flour on an old tablecloth. You don't want to roll it much. You want to just keep it a nice thickness. I usually, when I'm doing that myself, I roll out about 12 and continue them through each stage. So the girls are learning the rolling. You have to actually feel it, but we're hoping this will help you by seeing what it's supposed to look like. And with the filling, you're going to take a little bit, put it in the lower half of the circle, because the top part's going to come down and fold it over. And you go to stage 3, to seal it. You use water to just dampen the bottom half of the circle. And you fold over the top half. And you seal it, you press it down with your fingers, kind of press down on the top of the meat so it flattens out. And use a little flour and a fork. And you crimp the edges, just like ravioli, or if you make potato pierogies. So I would normally have 12 circles all laid out, and then you go back because it's messy. You got to get the flour off your hands. Then you have to get the meat off your hands, because when you seal it, you don't want any meat to be around the edges, or it'll leave little openings and the meat could cook out. Pierogies take time, but it's all done for love. When you see your family eat them and enjoy them. So we want to pass this on to the future generations. Here's one of the future generations handling them. And they tell me on winter break from college that they're going to make them and invite Pap and Mima over for dinner. And I know they can do it. They did an excellent job. And they had fun. They loved it. And here again we taught you don't want the fork to press into the meat at all, because the meat will cook out through the little hole. If you accidentally perforate it, then you just use a little water and a little flour and it will repair the dough. Just press it together a little bit. Here's Bailey, she's 13, and look at the great job she's doing. They've wanted to learn for a long time, and we made it happen this weekend. Here they are. You put your dozen in then when it's all filled. You don't have to wait for them to dry or anything. The dough doesn't have to dry. You just stick it in the pot. And it takes under 10 minutes. Usually I let them boil while I'm making another 12. So as soon as they float, it doesn't take them. Here we are. After they've drained, you drain them when they're all finished then, and your family's all together for dinner. You just want to put them when they drained and cool. You put them in plastic bags, and you would store them in the fridge until you're ready to have them for dinner. You add butter in a skillet, and you brown them. Most everybody likes them crispy, like golden brown. So we hope you enjoy it. This is to the future generations of the Sobolewskis and all of our family. We love you all. Enjoy. It's been a pleasure.